Hello, my name is Jiso and we are reading Shōbōgenzō, and I've forgotten to put on my Rakusu. There we go. Don't have a Kesa yet, but we're working on it. So we're reading Kesa kudoku in praise of the Kasāya or Kasāya or Kesa. We're on paragraph 64 from the Nishijima Cross edition. For hundreds of years, through one dynasty after another, Liang, Chen, Sui, Tang and Sung, many scholars of both the large and the small vehicles have abandoned the work of lecturing on sutras, recognizing that it is not the ultimate, and progressed to learning the authentically transmitted Dharma of the Buddhist patriarchs. When they do so, they inevitably shed their former shabby robes and receive and retain the authentically transmitted Kesa of the Buddhist patriarchs. This is indeed the abandonment of the false and the return to the true. In discussing the right Dharma of the Tathagata, we see the Western heavens as the very root of the Dharma. Many teachers of human beings, past and present, have established small views based on the sentimental and parochial thinking of the common man. Because the world of Buddha and the world of living beings are beyond being limited and being unlimited, the teachings, practice, and human truths of the Mahayana and the Hinayana can never fit inside the narrow thoughts of common men today. Nevertheless, common men in China, acting at random, have failed to see the Western heavens as the root and have considered their newly devised, limited, small views to be the Buddha Dharma. Such facts should never occur. Therefore, if people today who have established the mind want to receive and retain the Kesa, they must receive and retain the Kesa of the authentic transmission. They must not receive and retain a Kesa newly created according to the idea. Hello, sweetheart. Hello. Come on. Dog just came in.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Come on, Rich. Oh, you come. Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. We had a visit from the doggy. Oh, and by the way, the light you might notice is different today. That's because today, on the 19th of January, we have some daylight coming in through the window, although not much. It's going to get a bit dark. And I've forgotten to light my candle until it's Friday, can't you? Because I'm all over the place. Camera. There we go. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. I'll just go back a bit. Because the world of Buddha and the world of living beings are beyond being limited and being unlimited, the teachings, practice, and human truths of the Mahayana and the Hinayana can never fit inside the narrow thoughts of common men today. Nevertheless, common men in China, acting at random, have failed to see the Western heavens as the root, and have considered their newly devised, limited, small views to be the Buddha Dharma. Such facts should never occur. Therefore, if people today who have established the mind want to receive and to retain the Kesa, they must receive and retain the Kesa of the authentic transmission. They must not receive and retain a Kesa newly created according to the idea of the moment. The Kesa of the authentic transmission means that one that has been authentically transmitted from Shaolin Temple and Sokai Mountain, the one that has been received by the Tathagata's right successors without missing a single generation. The Kesa worn by their Dharma children and Dharma grandchildren is the traditional Kesa. What has been newly created in China is not traditional. Now, the Kesa worn by the monks who have come from the western heavens in the past and present are all worn as the Kesa authentically transmitted by the Buddhist patriarchs. Not one of these monks has worn a Kesa like the new Kesa being produced in China today by precept scholars. Dull people believe in the Kesa of precept scholars. Those who are clear throw such robes away. In general, the merit of the Kesa transmitted from Buddha to Buddha and from patriarch to patriarch is evident and easy to believe in. Its authentic transmission has been received exactly. Its original form has been handed down personally, and it exists really in the present. The Buddhist patriarchs have received and retained it, and succeeded to each other's Dharma until today. The ancestral masters who have received and retained the Kesa are all masters and disciples who experience the state and receive the transmission of Dharma. This being so, we should make the Kesa properly, according to the method of making the Kesa which has been authentically transmitted by the Buddhist patriarchs. This alone is the authentic tradition, and so it has long been experienced and recognized by all common and sacred beings, human beings and gods and dragons and spirits. Having been born to meet the spread of this Dharma, if we cover our body with the Kesa only once, receiving it and retaining it for just a kasana or a muhurta, the experience will surely serve as a talisman to protect us in the realization of the supreme state of Bodhi. When we dye the body and mind with a single phrase or a single verse, it becomes a seed of everlasting brightness, which finally leads us to the supreme state of Bodhi. When we dye D-Y-E, as in dyeing cloth, when we dye the body and mind with one real Dharma or one good deed, it may also be like this. Mental images arise and vanish instantaneously. They are without an abode. The physical body also arises and vanishes instantaneously. It too is without an abode. Nevertheless, the merit that we practice always has its time of ripening and shedding. The Kesa, similarly, is beyond elaboration and beyond non-elaboration. It is beyond having an abode and beyond having no abode. It is that which Buddhas alone, together with Buddhas, perfectly realize. Nevertheless, practitioners who receive and retain the Kesa always accomplish the merit that is thus to be gained, and they always arrive at the ultimate. Those without past good conduct, even if they pass through one life, 2 lives, or countless lives, can never meet the Kesa, can never wear the Kesa, can never believe in the Kesa, and can never clearly know the Kesa. In China and Japan today, we see that there are those who have had the opportunity to clothe their body once in the Kesa, and there are those who have not. The difference depends neither upon high or low status, nor upon stupidity or wisdom. Clearly it was determined by past conduct, past good conduct. This being so, if we have received and retained the Kesa, we should feel glad about our past good conduct, and should not doubt the accumulation of merit and the piling up of virtue. If we have not got the Kesa yet, we should hope to get it. We should strive, without delay, to sow the first seeds of receiving and retaining the Kesa in this life. Those who are prevented by some hindrance from receiving and retaining the Kesa should repent and confess before the Buddha Tathagatas and the 3 treasures of Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. How living beings in other countries must wish if only the robe and the Dharma of the Tathagata had been authentically transmitted and were intimately present in our country as they are in China. This shame must be deep, their shame must be deep, and their sadness tinged with resentment that the authentic tradition has not passed into their own country. Why are we so fortunate as to have met the Dharma in which the robe and the Dharma of the Tathagata, the world-honoured one, have been authentically transmitted? It is the influence of the great merit of prajna nurtured in the past. In the present corrupt age of the latter Dharma, some are not ashamed that they themselves have no authentic transmission, and they envy others who possess the authentic transmission. I think they may be a band of demons. Their present possessions and abodes, which are influenced by their former conduct, are not true and real. Just to devote themselves to and to venerate the authentically transmitted Buddha Dharma, this may be their real refuge in learning the state of Buddha. In sum, remember that the Kesa is the object of the Buddha's veneration and devotion. It is the body of the Buddha and the mind of the Buddha. We call it the clothing of liberation, the robe of a field of happiness, the robe without form, the supreme robe, the robe of endurance, the robe of the Tathagata, the robe of great benevolence and great compassion, the robe which is a banner of excellence, and the robe of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. We should receive and retain it like this, humbly receiving it upon our head. Because it is like this, we should never change it according to our own mind. As material for the robe, we use silk or cotton according to our suitability. It is not always that cotton is pure and silk is impure. There is no viewpoint from which to hate cotton and to prefer silk. That would be laughable. The usual method of the Buddhas in every case is to see rags as the best material. There are 10 sorts and 4 sorts of rags, namely burned, chewed by an ox, gnawed by rats, from clothes of dead people, and so forth. The people of the 5 areas of India, there's a tag there, 5 areas of India. India was said to be divided into 5 regions. Okay. The people of the 5 areas of India discarded rags like these in streets and fields as if they were filth, and so they called them filthy rags. Practitioners picked them up, washed them, and sewed them, and used them to cover the body. Among those rags there are various kinds of silk and various kinds of cotton. We should throw away the view which discriminates between silk and cotton, and study rags in practice. When in ancient times the Buddha was washing a robe of rags in Lake Anavatapta, I'll start that sentence again. When in ancient times the Buddha was washing a robe of rags in Lake Anavatapta, the Dragon King praised him with a rain of flowers and made prostrations of reverence. Some teachers of the small vehicle have a theory about transformed thread, which also may be without foundation. People of the great vehicle might laugh at it. What kind of thread is not transformed thread? When those teachers hear of transformation, they believe their ears, but when they see the transformation itself, they doubt their eyes. Remember, in picking up rags, there may be cotton that looks like silk, and there may be silk that looks like cotton. There being myriad differences in local customs, it is hard to fathom nature's creation. Eyes of flesh cannot know it. Having obtained such material, we should not discuss whether it is silk or cotton, but should just call it rags. Even if there are human beings or gods in heaven who have survived as rags, they are never sentient beings. They are just rags. Even if there are pine trees or chrysanthemums that have survived as rags, they are never insentient beings. They are just rags. When we believe the principle that rags is not silk or cotton and not gold, silver, pearl or jewel, rags are realized. Before we have got rid of views and opinions about silk and cotton, we have never seen rags, even in a dream. On one occasion, a monk asks the eternal Buddha, "Should we see the robe you received on Obai in the middle of the night as cotton, or should we see it as silk? In short, as what material should we see it?" The eternal Buddha says, "It is not cotton, and it is not silk." Remember, it is a profound teaching of the Buddha's truth that the Kesa is beyond silk and cotton. A little bit more, I think. Yeah, a little bit more. The Venerable Shanavasa is third in the transmission of the Dharma treasury. He has been endowed with a robe since birth. While he is a layman, this robe is a secular garment, but when he leaves home, it turns into a Kesa. In another case, the Bhikshuni Sukra, after establishing the will and being clothed in a cotton robe, has been born with a robe in every life and middle existence. On the day she meets Shakyamuni Buddha and leaves home, the secular robe with which she has had since birth changes instantly into a Kasāya. Changes instantly into a Kesa, as in the case of the Venerable Shanavasa. Clearly, the Kesa is beyond silk, cotton, and so forth. Moreover, the fact that the virtue of the Buddha Dharma can transform body and Dharma and all Dharmas is in those examples. The truth is evident that when we leave home and receive the precepts, body and mind, object and subject change at once. It is only because we are stupid that we do not know. It is not true that the usual rule of the Buddhas applies only to Shanavasa and Sukra, but to us. We should not doubt that benefit accrues in accordance with individual standing. We should consider such truths in detail and learn them in practice. The Kesa that covers the body of the monks whom the Buddha welcomes to take the precepts is not necessarily cotton or silk. The Buddha's influence is difficult to consider. The precious pearl within the robe is beyond those who count grains of sand. We should clarify and should learn in practice that which has quantity and that which is without quantity, that which has form and that which is without form, in the material colour and the measurements of the Kesa of the Buddhas. This is what all the ancestral masters of the western heavens and the eastern lands, past and present, learned in practice and transmitted as the authentic tradition. If someone is able to see and to hear a master in whom there is nothing to doubt, the authentic transmission from patriarch to patriarch being evident, but fails without reason to receive the authentic transmission from this ancestral master, such smugness would be hard to condone. The extent of this stupidity might be due to unbelief. It would be to abandon the real and to pursue the false, to discard the root and seek after branches. It would be to slight the Tathagata. People who wish to establish the Bodhi mind should always receive the authentic transmission of an ancestral master. Not only have we met the Buddha Dharma, which is so difficult to meet, also, as Dharma descendants in the authentic transmission of the Buddha's Kesa, we have been able to see and to hear, to learn and to practice, and to receive and to retain the authentic transmission of the Buddha's Kesa. This is just to see the Tathagata himself. It is to hear the Buddha's preaching of Dharma. It is to be illuminated by the Buddha's brightness. It is to receive and use what the Buddha received and used. It is to receive the one-to-one transmission of the Buddha's mind. It is to have got the Buddha's marrow. It is to be covered directly by Shakyamuni Buddha's Kesa. And it is Shakyamuni Buddha himself directly bestowing the Kesa upon us. Because we follow the Buddha, we have devoutly received this Kesa. More on this tomorrow. Thanks for listening.